Lisa Curtis, thank you so much for talking to ANI. I really appreciate your time. Your reaction to the announcement just 24 hours ago, what do you make of it, how all of this really played out?
Well, I think the announcement of the conclusion of the trade deal was very welcome and will provide a major boost to U.S.-India relations. I think that this is a big step in the right direction. I don't think that the relationship will turn around overnight. I think that there has been a lot of trust lost over the last 10 months. And there were not only trade problems, but also, there have been disagreements between the US and India, for example, on the aftermath of the India-Pakistan conflict, what happened there. So while this is a major step forward, I think that it will take time to get the U.S.-India relationship fully back on track. Now, in terms of what led to this announcement, I think it could be several things. I think number one, Ambassador Sergio Gore arriving in New Delhi on January 9th, making positive statements over the last several weeks. And I think that he probably was able to communicate with President Trump, indicate the benefits of the deal, how important the relationship was. So I think that could be one contributing factor. The second contributing factor, I believe, was the fact that India's imports of Russian oil had been going down, particularly in December, and that was noticed by President Trump and appreciated. And then the third point would be the fact that India concluded a free trade agreement with the EU just last week, which shows that India has some options on the table for its goods. And so I think that could have prompted the US to want to speed up its own trade agreement with India. So I think several factors probably played into how this all turned out, but those are just some of my thoughts.
In terms of, you mentioned about the Russian crude oil, India gearing down its import. We're hearing from the White House time and again that the ask was to seize the import of the crude oil. How do you see this playing out? Do you think India would probably step down in terms of its imports?
Well, yes, I think India clearly is decreasing its level of imports of Russian oil. However, I think we noticed that Prime Minister Modi did not repeat the pledge that Prime Minister Trump said he had made, which was that India would completely halt Russian oil imports. So there could be some problems down the line. For example, if President Trump, is expecting India to cut off the Russian oil imports completely by a certain time, and India maybe has a different understanding of what was committed to. So, right now we're just getting some of the details. We don't have all of the details, but I think that this issue in particular could be tricky in that Prime Minister Modi, of course, does not want to be seen as caving into U.S. demands regarding its relationship with Russia, which considers a strong historical partner. But also, Prime Minister Modi recognizes how important this is to President Trump. President Trump has been very consistent on wanting to see India reduce and eventually halt its Russian oil imports. But this could become a sticking point in the future.
Right. Now, we've seen deals cut through earlier as well. We saw the South Korea deal and, the fate of it, where it stands today. How do you think India should really navigate this whole issue in terms of what has been announced and really what the fine prints are and the path forward?
Well, I think that, number one, this is a good deal for both countries. It allows tariffs on India to go down from 50% to 18%. That is, a major positive step for India. We're seeing India reduce Russian oil imports, which was a major demand from the United States. I think on the providing U.S. farmers access to the Indian market, I think that Prime Minister Modi stuck to his guns on this one. He was very clear that he was going to continue to protect Indian farmers, and that indeed seems to be what he has done. So neither side got everything it wanted, but that's the nature of a deal and the compromises that have to be made on each side. And I think this is very important because the US-India partnership goes way beyond trade in terms of its importance for both countries' national security. And there has been so much invested in this relationship over the last 25 years that it really is essential we don't lose that strategic progress that has been made. So I think that's why this trade deal is so important, because of the broader implications of the US-India relationship.
Right. Now, in terms of Quad, it is a strategic partnership between four countries. We haven't really seen a lot of movement in terms of the Leaders Summit. Of course, there have been exercises on the sidelines, even though there were hiccups in the India-US relationship. Do you think now with this deal, we see that Leaders Summit happening anytime soon, or there would be more progress on the Quad?
Well, I think that President Trump was clear that he didn't want to make a visit to India until the trade deal was signed. Well, that's now done. So it does open the door for starting that planning for President Trump's visit to India. And I think if that does happen, there will likely be a Quad summit in New Delhi, as was planned last fall. The question really is, when might this take place? Some people are saying it would send a good signal if President Trump visited India, held a Quad summit before his meeting with Xi Jinping, which happens in April. That would send a sign of unity of the US and its allies and partners, and it would allow President Trump to go into his negotiations with China from a position of strength. But the problem is April is around the corner. It's coming up very soon. It's not clear if there is enough time to plan a major visit to India right now. So I think we'll have to wait and see, but it certainly does open the door for resuming the planning of such a visit by President Trump.
Now, Lisa, you've been, in the government, and these deals are not easy. They are complex deals, a lot of back and forth. There are a lot of officials who work on this. It didn't take as long as 18 years like the India-EU deal. But then, yes, this deal has taken some time. Talk to us about, who you think, in your view, is the real deal maker here, or somebody, the toughest negotiator here.
Well, I think President Trump himself has shown himself to be a pretty tough negotiator. After all, what we heard this past summer is that there was a deal on the table, that it was a deal that both the head of USTR, Jamieson Greer, Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, thought it was a pretty good deal. But when it got to President Trump's desk, it was not good enough for him. So I think ultimately, President Trump makes the call on these trade deals. We've seen that time and again. And so, he was finally convinced about the benefits of this trade deal with India. And, perhaps arguments were made about how important the strategic partnership was. Perhaps Ambassador Sergio Gore was able to convince the president to move forward. I'm sure all of these details will be coming out in due time, but I think it's clear that it's President Trump himself who is the real deal maker.
Right. Now, in terms of, we know that the papering is on as we speak. What are you expecting from the fine print or, the releases or the joint statement from both the sides?
Well, I think, we'll see what the major, outlines of the trade deal are. I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about the strategic partnership and, all of the work that went into this agreement, from everybody from the USTR, Jameson Greer, Secretary of State Rubio, Treasury Secretary Bessent, Commerce Secretary Lutnick. There are many people who were involved in these trade talks. So I think, we'll see that a lot of praise will go toward these officials who helped get it across the finish line, not to mention all the Indian officials that have been involved for so many months in these trade talks. It's really been a long slog, and it's required a lot of patience on both sides and among, both sides negotiators. So I'm sure there will be, a sense of relief and a sense of, jubilation when, the joint statement, finally comes out about the trade deal, because it's definitely been a long haul between the two sides.
Right. Now, your final word on, how you see this deal, improving or taking the India-U.S. relations to the next level, probably.
Well, I think even though cooperation between the U.S. and India has continued, defense cooperation has continued. We saw that with the signing of the 10-year defense framework agreement this past fall. We've seen cooperation continue on things like AI, as well as other issues. But what this trade deal does is it really unlocks, it provides the impetus and catalyst for other parts of the interagency to move forward, more quickly to, solidify those initiatives that have been in the works. So even though, cooperation was continuing at a certain level between the two countries, I think what we'll see is a major, leap forward in terms of solidifying initiatives, moving out on, major defense initiatives. And this really will unlock progress in the rest of the bilateral relationship.